Calaroga Shark Media.
I'm very angsty today. It's been a morning of distractions and aggravations. And hello, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. So I've decided no politics today. We all need a break from the politics. Now, I can tell you tomorrow, there's already 3 stories with politics, but those can wait. Ben Stiller comments, I saw him. We'll talk about that tomorrow. Let's do happy things today. But first, a controversy, and Johnny Mac does like a controversy. There seems to be some kerfluffle with the Golden Globes. I read several stories about it, and I didn't really understand the story, so I asked AI to summarize this and explain it to me so I could explain it to you. So hopefully this information is correct. So the AI wrote, here's where it gets messy. The Golden Globes are owned by Penske Media. Penske Media owns Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline. Penske also owns Luminate, which is the analytics company that supposedly created the list of the 25 eligible podcasts for Golden Globes. Okay, so we're going to give an award. Luminate made the list. They're owned by Penske. And then there are the 3 main trades, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, and Deadline, also all owned by Penske, which is a fun fact that most people don't know. The AI wrote, the Globes had said an outside company would determine the list, and technically they weren't lying. It's just that their outside company is another company they also own. But then came the real bombshell. Penske Media is reportedly selling marketing packages for up to $75,000, basically for your consideration ads to help podcasts promote themselves to Globe voters. So if I'm understanding this right, you're being encouraged to buy an ad in one of the 3 trades to promote yourself to Globe voters for an award controlled by the people who are selling you the ads. Right? The AI wrote, so to recap, Penske owns the awards, owns the data company choosing who's eligible, owns the media outlets covering the awards, and is now allegedly selling ad packages to the very people who want to win those awards. As George Carlin said, it's a big club and you ain't in it. One industry insider said, the Penske thing is out of control. They said an outside company would handle it. It's all a racket. All right, we'll keep an eye on that one. Let's check it in with Dane Cook, who's 53 years old now. He spoke to Cincinnati Magazine. I happened to reference Dane Cook in my college class on Monday night. None of them knew who Dane Cook was. It goes fast. I was doing it in context. I was teaching them about how I program radio stations and what something in the A category would be. And there was a time when Dane Cook was it. He was the superstar in comedy, and he was an A in your music programming library. 20-something years later, the kids don't know who he is. But he was a superstar for a while. Dane said, I think that anything goes in stand-up comedy. Part of stand-up is the pinprick and the release of how everyone is feeling. Sometimes what they're feeling might be uncouth, but the reality is everyone's laughing at this one thing because we're sort of feeling the same thing. That doesn't mean it's right. Sometimes we're laughing at the most wrong thing possible. He says there are limits. If you don't feel malice from a comedian, all topics are in play. You don't get laughs when audience starts sensing the meanness. Dane said early in his career, he learned how he could let the ship leave the shore. Even if his jokes went pretty far, I'd still have old ladies pinching my cheek after the show, and I'd say some pretty wild stuff, especially in my New York years where I was like, let me see how far I can really go. I had this epiphany early on that I liked comics and performers who were brash. I don't know what's going to make you laugh until we're all laughing, so I love this idea of going on stage and expressing myself in foolish, absurd, and irreverent ways. He realized he's a storyteller, not a set-up punch comic. It's not my strong suit because I have this physical element. I just happened to say something on stage a few months ago that you might say is a vintage setup with a punchline. I didn't write it ahead of time. It just happened on stage. It was like click, click, boom, setup, punchline. I loved it. Maybe there's more of that to come. He said Johnny Carson's Tonight Show taught him a comedian didn't have to be one kind of funny. Johnny would have a terrible moment in his monologue, and you'd be talking about that the next day and not one of the great jokes he landed. Like when the cue cards fell on the floor and he didn't know what to do. Whenever something like that occurs, I'm present and real. I met Dane once in my travels. Cool guy. I remember going to the place we would get sandwiches to go get him some sun chips. I forget the particulars. I think that was just one of the requests that he had coming in. And sure, I'll go get you sun chips. I probably expense them. Katt Williams going on tour. It's the Golden Age Tour. It'll kick off in January 23rd in Ontario, California. It'll swing through the South, Philadelphia in April, wrapping up in Chicago on May 2nd. Now, what caught my eye in the press release was the About Katt Williams boilerplate paragraph. Let's check it out. With a career spanning over 20 years, Katt Williams has earned a worldwide reputation as one of today's top entertainers, etc., etc. In 2002, Williams made his on-screen debut as a guest star on NYPD Blue. Did we know this? I didn't know that. Did you know my dream? I wanted to be an extra on NYPD Blue. I wanted to be Guy on Other Shift. Now, when that show was on, I was in my early 30s and, Irish-American kid from New York City. I looked the part. I didn't do anything about this. This was just my dream. But, just imagined if I was in enough episodes, eventually they would let me say, "Hey, Andy," as I walked down the stairs while Sipowicz walked up the stairs. Didn't happen. Didn't do anything about it. I could have been in the episode in 2002 with Katt Williams, who subsequently landed his first feature film role as Money Mike Friday After Next. His extensive filmography includes notable roles. Here are some notable roles. Are you ready? Write this down. Notable roles, Katt Williams. Here are the notable roles. Father Figures, Norbit, Scary Movie 5, Epic Movie, Bastards, The House Next Door, Meet the Blacks, Cats and Dogs, The Revenge of Kitty Galore, oh yes, very notable, The Boondocks, Wild and Out, and a guest role on Atlanta, which earned him a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Guest Actor in a Comedy Series. All right, that's a good credit. The National Comedy Center announced that the National Comedy Center is now the home of the career archive of Stellar and Mira, Ben's parents. That's cool. The archive spans more than 5 decades of creative collaboration, documenting the evolution and impact of one of America's most enduring comic partnerships. What a coincidence. Ben Stiller's new documentary about his parents' lives and legacies debuts October 24th on Apple TV. Throughout the film, materials from the archive are featured, so you can check that out. Ben said, "Knowing my parents' body of work is preserved at the National Comedy Center means a great deal, because the material they left behind was not just a gift for my family, but for anyone who wants to understand comedy as a creative process." That's great. The center's doing really great work. I got to get up there. I like long drives. I got to get up to Jamestown at some point. Ben had some other things to say, but they involve politics, and we're not doing that today. We're just chilling out today. You hear my tone today? I'm not ranting and raving. We're going easy. That's what we're doing today. Now, tomorrow, totally different. But today, taking it easy, friends. Tim Heidecker is going to star as a late-night talk show host in The Comedy Hour. The Comedy Hour follows a beleaguered late-night host forced to produce his show through famine, fire, and plague. The network saddles him with a robot co-host. An audience start to like the sidekick more than the host. The Comedy Hour is written by Colby Day. Now, Colby Day scripted Adam Sandler's Spaceman movie, which, as you know, is one of the 5 good Adam Sandler films. So that's some good pedigree there. Heidecker's character is named Jimmy, which is fun. This next story gets from Jacobin.com or Jacobin.com. Not sure how you pronounce that, but Benjamin Fong asked the question, what is Tim Dillon doing? I agree. I am starting to lose interest in Dillon's show. I prefer when he's just solo and vamping on the news. Benjamin Fong writes, wavering between irony, outrage, and hallucination, the Tim Dillon Show presents the same question that any viewer of Mulholland Drive must ask, what am I watching? It's right-wing, but not straightforwardly so. It's ironic, but also strangely sincere. Dillon doesn't leave much daylight between performance and intention. It's easy to lump him in with most right media, either because he's just that guy or because he's irony poisoned himself into functionally participating in that sphere. I think that's what happened. The whole point of Dillon's persona on the show is to be vile without remainder, so self-serving, cynical, and bleak that no rational nugget can be unearthed. After the LA fires, he explained that he was lying about losing his home to get sympathy and money. Near the end of a recent episode, he claimed he would do a set at the Riyadh Comedy Festival in the blood of someone who just got beheaded. Gianmarco Soresi spoke to currentaffairs.org. He talked about performing overseas. He said, honestly, being an American comedian, American comedians can't complain to any other comedian in the world because our media is so shoved down everyone's throat that I was able to make jokes about RFK in Milan. No Italian could come to a normal American audience and talk about Giorgio Meloni. I went to Istanbul and I was like, what can I say? And the booker said, you can say anything you want. And he said, there's going to be a Muslim call to prayer in the middle of your second show. And I said, can I joke about it? And he said, yeah, joke about whatever you want. I was like, you're saying I can say whatever I want? And he said, yes. And I did. And it was great. Then I told him I was going to post a video. And he was like, do not post a video if you ever want to come back to Istanbul again. Gianmarco said, okay, I'm learning. Basically, it's okay in Istanbul. It's not okay outside. My girlfriend is always telling me, please don't go to jail for a joke. How we doing? Today kind of chill. I don't even have my good voice today or my creative fastball. Just a very angsty day, and I don't want to get angst into the show. Chattanooga's Lookout Comedy Festival is back, baby. 30-plus comedians. Starts tonight, goes through the 25th. Officials said, with notable headlining performers from all over the country, like Trix, with 2 X's, Joe Zimmerman, Nick Murphy, and Casey Balsham. This year's 4-day festival is proof that Chattanooga's comedy scene is filled not only with fun, but burgeoning opportunities for comics and audiences alike. Out today on Comedy Export's YouTube channel, Sean Walsh, back from the bed. Celebrity Jeopardy is switching services. It's moving from Amazon to Netflix. Colin Jost hosted the first season. It's unclear if he will return. That reminds me, I had in the notes a Colin Jost Ferry story. Let me pull that up. That was supposed to be in the script. The New York Times with a major story. The headline, Colin Jost, Pete Davidson, and the Staten Island ferry fiasco. Nearly 4 years after they bought an out-of-service ferry boat for $280,100, their plans for a floating event space may be running aground. The Times writes, when they looked at the 2,100-ton hunk of metal, they envisioned a floating event space with 2 restaurants, 6 bars, a concert venue, and hotel rooms with private sun decks on a former Staten Island ferry. Jost has called the acquisition the dumbest and least thought-through purchase I've ever made in my life. Pete Davidson, who's just back from the Riyadh Comedy Festival, described it as a lifelong problem for me and Colin. No wonder Pete's playing Riyadh. He needs money. Launched in 1965, the John F. Kennedy was the oldest vessel in the Staten Island ferry fleet. The Times writes in the auction listing, the agency did nothing to sugarcoat its seaworthiness. The boat was in, quote, poor condition. Without a working engine, it had to be towed. There were 30 tugboat companies in New York Harbor, which will transport your ship for around $1,700 an hour. Then they had to find a place to tow it to. This is a mess. April 11th, 2022, the JFK was towed 3 miles, all right, so that's $5,000. Skimming down this very lengthy article, then we found there's asbestos in the ship. The Times quotes a ship expert who says the thing about asbestos is it's not an issue until you go to take it out. It has to be done in hazmat gear. You're looking at salty numbers to do asbestos remediation. All right, once they solve that, where do you put it? The Times points out, a good place would be, say, up here on the East River. Problem is, those aren't cheap. Another expert points out large boats block sunlight, which can damage marine ecosystems and kill aquatic life over time. All right, maybe we should scrap the thing. Tommy O'Toole is a partner at Compass Maritime that handles ship sales. He did some math if you wanted to scrap it. He said, let's say something weighed 2,000 tons. If it's worth $150 a ton to scrap, that's $300,000. If the tow cost you $350,000, you'd have to pay someone $50,000. Kevin Hennessy is the former captain of the JFK. He told the Daily News in 2022 that the boat had a serious cockroach problem. He said this was an impulse buy with 2 guys with a lot of money who don't know anything about maritime vessels. And that is your politics-free comedy news for today. See you tomorrow.